Continuing our discussion about file I/O, we're going to talk about .xls files, and also if you're using Windows or Office 2010 version 10, they sell them as their .xls files, .xlsx files. Either one will work with MATLAB. It's made the adjustment. Most people have worked with Excel files. They have data that's in a grid, rows and columns, and they come in sheets. And the default is sheet 1, and then they have other sheets, sheet 1 and sheet 2, which will matter here a little bit later. Right now, let's just look at MATLAB and how we open a file, an Excel file, and read the data. We're going to get the data in 3 different formats. We're going to get one format. Let me go ahead and open this. We're going to open this file, Excel file. The operative command here is XLS read, and you give it the file name. You give the file name, it will open it, and it will default to sheet 1. You can change that later, but it will read the data from this file, and it will return it in 3 different formats. One is a number format, where it just puts the numbers in there, and then we'll talk about how it deals with non-numeric data, but it will just put the numbers that are in the spreadsheet in a variable called num, and that will actually be an array. Then it will also put the text data into a cell array, and then it will put all of the data into a cell array as well. So we'll look at that. The file that we're going to be working with is Excel underscore file.xls, and it's this file over here that's indicated in the current window. You can actually right click on the file, and if you hit open outside of MATLAB, it actually will bring up the file outside of MATLAB. So this is actually Excel here that I'm looking at. And you notice I have a file here with this data on it, which looks a lot like the data we used when we talked about cell arrays and motivated structures. So I did add the height column here, and you'll see why I did that in a minute, so I could illustrate some things about the number format here. So that's the file, and now I'm going to execute here. So we're going to step through. And so it's opened the file and loaded all these variables here. And as we step through, here's num. Now notice what num is. Once again, it's an array of just the numbers. So if I bring this over here so we can compare, so it's an array of just the numbers. And if you look here, so it ignored the first row, which is a header row. It ignored the first and second column because those aren't numbers; those are strings. And then it gives us the numbers that are from cell C2 down to cell C6. So 24, 13, 30, 34, and 40. Then it also put the numbers from this column in there. Once again, ignoring the header, 66 all the way down to 75. And so these 2 columns of numbers define what's called a number box, this concept of a number box. And so going back over here to the board, so if you have numbers, if you have a number here, let's say if you had a 4 and I don't know, an 8 and a 13 and a 15, then this area is called the number box. So it's the outer extremities of where all the numbers are in your Excel file. And anything inside of that number box, this box right here, let me do it in a different color. So this box here, defined by the upper leftmost number, the upper rightmost number, the lower rightmost number, and the lower leftmost number, that's called the number box. Anything that's not a number inside that box will be replaced in this array by the letters NaN, which means not a number. And so you see here the number box is defined by this 24, the 66, the 75, and the 40. And so these letters that are in here, these strings that are in here, get replaced by NaN. So that's what's going on here with the array that is returned from the function XLS read. Now let's step through some more here, and let's look at the text. So Bring this back up again. And so now this is the second thing that is returned by XLS read. And this is a cell array of text. And you can see it's a cell array because it has the tick marks on it. And also, if you look up here in the workspace, it will tell you that TXT is of type cell, and going back here, NUM is of type double. So anyhow, we look at this, and we see that we got all the text. We got the column headers. We got the first two columns of data, and then we hear in the third column where there are numbers, they don't come over. So these are empty strings here. They are not spaces. They are empty strings, and so there's nothing there. And then here in column D, that gets translated over as the proper text. And so only this is a cell array containing only text. The numbers are omitted. So now let's step through one more time and look at the third thing that comes out, which is a cell array that contains everything. So bringing back up our Excel, you notice this cell array contains both the text, the strings, and the numbers, and they are in cells. You see the brackets here, and so they are in cells. And you can see once again in the workspace that raw is of type cell, 655 type cell. So that's how you read an Excel file using XLS read. Now I'm going to do another example and show you how to write to an Excel file. So we go up here, and I've defined some data here, and we're going to write. This is a cell array. This is a 4x3 cell array, and so is this one, 4 rows, 3 columns. And I defined these cell arrays, and we're going to write these cell arrays out to Excel files. So that's the plan here. So let me execute this. So first of all, we're going to find our data. Data 1 is going to be a cell array. So I've stepped through, and there's data 1. And then we're going to look at data 2. So our data has been defined. Data 1 and data 2 are defined. And now we're going to write them. Now you notice over here, there is no file named Excel_file_new.xls. So we're going to use the function XLSWrite to write to this file. Now, this file doesn't exist right now. So if a file doesn't exist, and you give it a file name, it will create it. So the way XLSWrite works is I give it a file name and I give it the data that I want to write. Now, it could just be an array of numbers. It could be an array of strings. It could be a variable. Right now, I'm doing a cell array, which has strings and numbers in it. So XLSWrite is going to write this data 1 here, it's going to write this data to the file Excel_file_capital NEW. It doesn't exist, and so I want to pay attention to this window as I execute this next line, and it will actually create it. And so let me click on this to execute, and if you look over here, it actually created this file Excel_file_new.xls. So let's edit, and it put data 1 in there. So let's look at that file. Open outside of MATLAB. We bring it up, and there it is. And so if you look and compare that data 1 to this data here, it's clear that that cell array got written to sheet 1 of the file. The default is it gets written to the upper left-hand corner of sheet 1 of the Excel file. Okay, so that's that one. Next up, you can actually overwrite that data. So if you open up the same file and give it new data, and you don't specify, there is a way to specify the location where the file goes, probably where the data goes. But if you don't specify, it's going to write in the upper left-hand corner of sheet 1, and it's going to overwrite what we had before. So let's look at that. Let's bring this back up. And so that's what this looks like now. Now, after I execute this line, this data is going to change to data 2. So let's do that. And execute line 21. And I get an error. And the reason I get an error is that this file is already open. When a file, you can read from a file if it's already open, but you cannot write to a file that's already open. So I've got to go up in here and close this file in order to read from it. So let me close that file as well. So since I got an error, I'm going to come back. I've closed the file, and I'm going to redo this. So I execute again. There's data 1, data 2. I write to the file. Okay, now I'm back at line 21. The file is closed, and so when I execute, I go back and open this up. Oops, what's wrong? I go back and open up my file here, and you notice that the data that was there, that was data 1 with all the guys' names, has changed to data 2 with all the ladies' names here. So that data got overwritten. So you have to be sort of careful when you're writing to files that you make sure the data goes where you want it to go. So let's talk about how you can send data to different sheets and to different locations on those sheets. So next up, I'm going to step through, and on line 24, I'm going to write to a specific sheet. So now, if you notice, I added another parameter here to the XLSWrite function, and I'm going to write to sheet 2. So right now, if I look at this, there's nothing on sheet 2. Sheet 2 is empty. But now what I'm going to do is actually write to that sheet 2. So let's do that. So when I execute line 24, once again I get the error. It's my mistake. I left the file open. If you leave the file open and try to write to it, it will give you an error. So I have to close the file and go back here, set my breakpoint so that we can look at this and execute again. So I'll step through, step through, step through, step through. Okay, now I'm back here on line 24. Let's verify that sheet 2 is empty. Still is. Alright, so now I shall close that, and then I'll come back and execute line 24. So I've done that. Now I come back here and reopen the Excel file, and notice on sheet 2, I've put in data 1 on sheet 2. So sheet 1 has remained the same with the ladies' names. Sheet 2, I have the guys' names now on that because of what was executed on line 24. I wrote to Excel, file new, data 1 to sheet 2. You can also tell it what specific location. So on line 27, I'm going to write to the file. I'm going to write data 2 to sheet 2, and I've defined here the upper left-hand corner. So the upper left-hand corner of the data will be at cell D12. Okay, and so let me go and make sure this is closed. So what I'm doing before I execute it, I'm sending this data to sheet 2, and then cell D12, which is this cell here, will be the upper left-hand corner. So data 2 table will start there on sheet 2. So let's let me make sure I close this out so I don't get the error. There we go. And now I step through and execute line 27, and then I do this outside of MATLAB, and there it is. So data 2 got copied into, as you see here, so D2, that was the upper left-hand corner. So that's how you write to an Excel file. Which is relatively straightforward. Next up, we're going to look at an example and step through it relatively quickly of how all this can be put together to make a calculation. So you come here, and what this does, this code is going to read in our Excel file, which is once again, go back and look at that. So it's going to read in this data, and that's what it's going to do on line 8. And then what we're going to do here, lines 12 through 17, is we're going to calculate the average height. So what I did is we're going to calculate the average height here, and then we're going to put that number in cell E7. And so I'm going to do it two ways. The first way I'm going to do it is using the raw data. And so I'll get this raw data, and I'm going to use a for loop, and I'm going to set a total at 0. I'm going to use a for loop and loop through this column, adding as I go, get the sum, and make that sum height total here, get the sum, and then divide by the number of rows minus 1. And the reason I'm doing that is, once again, if you look at this data, I'm starting on the second row. And I have to because there's a header row up there. So be very careful when you're dealing with Excel data. A lot of times you'll have a header row in there, and you have to start on the second row, not the first row as we're used to. And then when I'm dividing by rows -1, I have to do that because I have to subtract out the fact that there was a header row here. Okay, that's one way to do it. And so I calculate AVG underscore height using that. There's another way to do it, and I do both of them for illustration here, is I could just get the number data and look at remember, the number data is just going to give me these 5 numbers, this column of numbers here in an array. And so I could just take the mean or the average of the third column of that number array. And that will also give me average height. Okay. So and then my game plan continues. Then I prepare my output. So I augment the raw data with the average height. And then I write it out to the Excel file, to another Excel file, new2. So that's the game plan. So let's watch this execute. So go here. So I step through. I step through here, and so I get my num, my text, and my raw, which are all down here. And then the next step, I start calculating total height. So I'm using this raw here, and I'm going to loop through these values down here, and I'm going to get a total, and then I'm going to divide. And so as I go through, if you look over here in the workspace, as I loop through, you will see the total height will accumulate as I loop through. So it's 201 now, it's 274. It's 349. Okay, and then once I finish the loop, I come back down here to line 17, and I calculate the average height by dividing. Okay. So AVG height is 69.8. I do it as I said before. I do it again, but this time I'm going to use. Scroll up here. I'm going to use the number array, and I'm just going to do the average of this column here. So that's the third column in the number array. So I'm going to do the mean of num, all rows, column 3, and that will give me average height as well. And you see average height equals, the word average underscore height is 69.8 as the AVG height is. So that's 2 different ways to calculate the same value. Now I've got to prepare my output because I'm going to write a cell array back to a new file. So I'm going to prepare that output. I'm going to augment because keep in mind I want my output to look like, I want to have my original table, but I want to have the average height down here, and that's the number 69.8. So I'm going to use my original table and just augment it with a value 69.8 here in the 7th row, 5th column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's where I want to put my output data. So that's what I do over here on line 23 is I say raw 7, 5 in my cell array, get average height. And cell array is going to pad all of the empty, it's going to pad it so that these values will have nothing in them. Okay, so I execute that line. And if you noticed here, what has happened is my new value of raw, it has padded the 7th row here, and it's put 69.8 here in the 5th column of the 7th row. So now my data is ready. My cell array raw is ready, and so I do XLS write. I tell it the file. This is going to be a file named new2, so this is going to be a new file, and then I give it the data raw to put in there. Okay, and so when I execute that, if you look over here in the current window, when I execute this, you're going to see that file created, and there it is. And if I go in and look at it, there's my new file, sheet 1, upper left hand corner. It has put my data, which is the original data from raw, which is here, and then it has added 69.8, which is the average height. So that's an example of how you can use MATLAB and Excel together to bring in data from Excel, make calculations, and then write that data back out. We're going to now look at other file formats where you can do tasks as well.